Bienvenidos a la próxima episodio de Overcoming Graduation. Alright guys, starting it off with a little Spanish tonight for you. So, tonight we're going to be interviewing Kresimir Jug. Now, his story is one that I think will impact just about every one of you listeners in one way or another. He currently is running 5 different businesses and is going to be sharing with us his story of how he went from a young man who was diagnosed with cancer, given a very serious diagnosis, and told that life would not be what he expected. How he took that diagnosis, turned things around, and then became a person who is now a CrossFit gym owner, the co-founder of Life by Design, a chiropractor by practice, and just a badass cancer conqueror who is starting yet another business, which I'll let you hear about in the interview. So Kresimir's story has so much in it. He'll be sharing some of his tips on how to be productive and how to maintain focus in your life. And you're going to get a lot from this one, guys. So I look forward to hearing the feedback. Please give me comments, give me questions on the blog, on the podcast, and I am excited to hear what you guys think of this one. So let me get this one started, and here is the next episode. This is Brian Drury, and tonight I'll be interviewing Kresimir Jug. And Kresimir was actually the first person I ever interviewed for the Overcoming Graduation podcast, and in my, inexperience, I only was using one recording device. So after a really awesome interview, I was all jacked up, I'd done my first interview, I go to upload the file, it crashes, I lost everything. So Kresimir was there for the first interview, and also the first hey man, sorry, can we reschedule? And now I have, at any time, 2 to 3 recording devices going during any interview. So I learned from that. And Kresimir, thanks so much for coming back, man. I'm really excited to hear the story again.
Oh, dude, you're way too hard on yourself. It was fun, and I always love talking to excited people, so it's not a problem.
Thanks, man. So for everyone, Kresimir, who has a variety of different things he's going to be telling us about, from the various businesses he owns, to the different professions he's held, and his amazing story about overcoming some crazy obstacles in his life. It's really a fantastic story. You're going to get so much from it. So Kresimir, man, could you tell the story again? Because I don't think I'll ever get tired of hearing it.
Oh, thanks, pal. So what you guys need to know about me is I was diagnosed and with malignant thyroid cancer when I was 18 years old. And if we go a little bit before that, what you guys have to understand is that, my family is, the American dream. We're Canadian, we live in Canada, but the American dream family. Like, my parents came over, we lived in, at the time it was communist Yugoslavia, and my parents were, those people that fled communism, because life under that system was really, really bad. I mean, my dad tells stories of, going to the market to buy food, and there just not being food. There's a story, I was too young to remember, but when my grandparents came over to visit, my dad tells a story of my grandfather walking into a grocery store for the first time. I mean, think about it, a grocery store. There's a grocery store on every corner, of every major intersection in North America. But when my grandfather saw that, he started crying. He couldn't believe that you could just get food any single time you want. So my parents fled, and we came to Canada. And growing up, one of the things that really stuck out about my parents, particularly my father, is my father was a man of action. He was always looking forward. He was a forward-thinking person. And the thing that I remember most about him is the obstacles that we faced as a family in a new country. My father always knew what to do. I remember there was a time when they didn't have any money, and my mom's mother, so my grandmother, got sick, and my dad figured it out. He, got an extra job. He started working extra hours to afford the plane ticket to send my mom home to be with her mom. There was a time when we couldn't afford, a new pair of shoes, and he figured that. I mean, he just figured things out.
Right.
And things went really well for them. And I remember when I was diagnosed, I remember what it was like, because I was at home. So I got the diagnosis, right, that malignant thyroid cancer, and it didn't really hit me. It didn't really hit me when I heard it from the doctor. So I was like, okay, well, whatever. And then I remember it was a, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just laughed oh, whatever, because you're just kind of in shock at that point. You can't even process it.
Absolutely. Oh, dude, listen, man, you've been through your problems. You know what it's like. You're just kind of in shock. You're like, is this really just happening?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I remember when he came home, this is when it really set in. I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I was home from school because I would finish school at about 2:30. I had, my last period was spare, so I'd come home and I'd be working. And usually when my father came home, it was like this amazing greeting. He'd come in, it'd be like, hello, and we'd give him a big hug, and it was just really nice. It was just our family.
Right.
And I remember he came in, and he didn't say anything, and he kind of just, he was like a ghost. He kind of floated in. He wasn't making any noise. And I remember he sat in the TV room, and he had these big fat fingers, and he buried his head in his hands, and he started crying. And he said something that forever transformed my life and completely changed my path in life. He said, my son has cancer, and I don't know what to do about it. Mm-hmm. And it was like a pillar falling down in my life, because the man that I associated with, it's okay, my dad will figure it out. He'll take care of it. He'll always be able to find something to do. He didn't know what to do. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could tell you that, that was the low point and things got better from there, but they didn't. They actually got worse. For anyone that's listening to me speaking knows that if you have a chronic condition, you're kind of put into this system, and you're never really out of the system. The way that it would work is, at the time, I chose to have my thyroid taken out, and I did the radiation. And there was just a process where they would radiate you and they would test you forever. Wow. On and on and on. And that just didn't seem right to me. I'm like, man, if you're giving me a clean bill of health, then this is something that should stop. Like, it just, listen, I was 18, so what did I care about? I cared about women, cared about drinking with my buddies, playing sports, because I played college football, right? And I cared about having a good time. And it's funny because I was faced to think about some really important decisions in my life, like my mortality, my life, like the fact that my life could end, the fact that I could die in a hospital room was a real, thing. Like, it became very, very real. And I remember going to my doctor's appointments, and it was always another thing. Oh, we have to do this test. Okay. Well, we did this test, and then it was, well, we have to do this test, and then we have to do this test. And this shit went on forever. And I remember in third-year university, I met my wife, Rochelle, who was really passionate about being a chiropractor. And I remember undergrad ended, and I was like, well, I don't really know, what I want to do, but I really like this girl, and she wants to be a chiropractor, and I kind of want to deal with the human body. So I think being a chiropractor is a good idea. So we went to chiropractic school. And here's the really, really cool part that I wish I was more deliberate about. But, I mean, the truth is it really kind of happened by accident. I remember opening up a book in chiropractic college, and it was called Chiropractic Philosophy. And this was the first time that I heard about philosophy. And it told me, essentially, I'll summarize the message. It said your body, my body, your body, everybody's body, is designed to be extraordinary. Mm-hmm. And that health is a normal state of the human body. And that happiness is the normal state of the human body. And I looked at my life, and I remember sitting in my dorm room. I remember reading those words. And I remember sitting up, and I started sweating. Because I was like, oh my God, if I'm supposed to be healthy, I'm not healthy. Right. Because not only did I have cancer, but I was also the kid with bronchitis every year, and I'd get the flu, 3 or 4 times a year. I was a very sick child. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh man, this means that I have to change. Right. So I just came to the conclusion. I was like, well, I can either, it was kind of like I can either, live out the rest of my life like, begging, or I can just stand up and whatever happens, happens. So I decided to stand up, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to be done with my cancer treatment, and I'm just, I'm going to start living fully and treating my body like a temple. So I totally changed the way that I was eating. I totally changed the way that I was moving my body. I totally changed the way that I was thinking. And I made sure that I was seeing, at that time, my chiropractor, at least every week. And the results were amazing. So to make a long story short, I remember, I remember telling my medical doctor that this was my plan of action, and she definitely thought that I was crazy and that I would harm myself. And I said, no problem. I said, you could be totally right. But like I said, I'm tired of being scared. I'm going to live out the rest of my life this way. And she said, that's fine. She said, I understand your decision. I disagree. And I said, great. And to make a long story short, I'm the only cancer patient that she's had out of 323 cancer patients that hasn't remissed into cancer. Everybody else has.
Wow.
So.
I love the story, but I remember when we first met and I heard you tell that story for the first time, you said, I just told the doctor no. And you said, I think a lot more people could benefit from telling their doctors no, because I think at times we treat doctors as almost being maybe even godlike in a sense that their word has to be right. And the Sean Stevenson quote that I love, that you should never believe a prediction that doesn't make you feel better, because no one knows the future. No one has it all figured out. So although one doctor's opinion, could be valid, it could be what's worked for other people, it may not be what's right for you. So I think it's just...
Yeah, man. I can't disagree. It was, I was at a point so low in my life that I was like, you know what? If I'm going to live out the rest of my life like this, forget it. Mm-hmm. I would rather live, 3 more hours feeling really free and good about myself than living like, dependent on other people. I just didn't like where I was at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so another big piece of your story, and I remember we talked about this in the first interview, that I love is so many people are so concerned with, how do I pick what the rest of my life is about? How do I pick the perfect major or the perfect career path that is going to take me for the rest of my life? And one of the biggest things is people don't realize whatever you pick doesn't have to be your future unless you want it to be. But also, I love the way you picked. You said, I really like this girl and she's doing that, so what the hell? What better way than to follow love?
I didn't really select that way. To be perfectly honest, I love what you're doing, because I remember what it was like at that point, and we're taught that when we're growing up, there's almost like these two lives that you lead. There's this childhood life, and then you have to give up everything that's fun and exciting, and then you have to enter into quote unquote real life.
Right. Yes.
Right, and that's the way that I looked at it, and unfortunately, we're also taught that there's no way in a million years that you could ever make a life or a career out of living your passion. And I think that's one of the most tragic things that's being taught to other people.
Yeah. It's this view that in society and I think, unfortunately, what's taught and what the kind of common belief is that when you graduate, you either choose happiness or you choose safety. And
I totally agree with you.
It's like, and safety is going to be serious adulthood. We're wearing suits and we're having wine and cheese parties. And then happiness is terrifying and you could fail and oh my God, it's all this unsafe. The thing is, life is not black and white. You and I know that. Life doesn't follow, everybody knows that, but life doesn't follow a set plan or a set program. And there are lots of things that have happened in yours and my life where I'm sure for you, you say, that's not how it was supposed to go. You're an 18-year-old kid. You're sitting there, you want to talk about girls and football and drinking with your buddies, and you're faced with questions of mortality and life after this life and all these bigger things that it's like I shouldn't have to deal with. And so what were you had something you want to say?
So it's interesting that you said that it's you people. I tell this story often. One of my so we have the University of Western Ontario here. I'm from London, Ontario, mm-hmm. And as an aside, Western Ontario, I think 10 years ago, was voted by Playboy to have the second hottest women after UCLA.
Really?
That's a trivia question. You got it. That's a trivia question. So, Brian, anytime you want to come to London, Ontario, man, you have a place to stay?
Yeah, Kresimir, I think I have a business meeting there next week. That's so crazy that just came up, yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, one of my favorite places and times to go is I love going onto campus, and I go every year, and I go just as the students are coming back. So school for us starts after Labor Day, which is the first weekend in September.
Mm-hmm.
And the students come back, around that weekend. And it's always like all the old people want to stay away from campus, but I actually go back onto campus because I love the buzz and the energy of these children coming back. They walk around, their chests are out, they're walking around, they're very proud, they're excited for the year. It's just a wonderful place. And I remember, the one time I almost ran a kid over. He totally ran in front of my car, and he was running in front of my car because there was a girl who he was trying to pick up that he was literally chasing. And I was like, this is amazing. And then what happens is, because my chiropractic practice is very close to the university, so we're always invited to come to the career fair, right? Because we're representing a chiropractic college. Mm-hmm. And during the career fair, it's incredibly sad what I see. I see these proud and boastful children who were excited and proud about life. Now it's time to enter into a career in quote-unquote real life, mm-hmm. and they look like they're 90-year-old people. And clearly you can tell that I'm excited by what I'm doing. So I'm saying, hey, you should be a chiropractor. And here's what they tell me. They say, that sounds good, but it sounds hard.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, no shit. It's going to be hard. Anything that you have in your life that's worth anything is going to be hard for you to get. So that reminded me very clearly of your comment. It's happiness or safety, and they're more than happy to pick safety than their own happiness. And that's a price that is incredible. That's a price that I don't think anyone should ever have to pay.
Of course, I believe we talked about this last time, but people think that's the mentality, right? That's the belief. But what is thought to be safe is not safe. When you go into something that you're just doing because you believe it's what you're supposed to, or it's somebody else's dream, right? Because everybody tells you, hey, go to school, get the good job, go into that job, climb the corporate ladder, wear nice suits, get nicer suits, get a bigger house. That's how the happiness is going to come. And so so many people believe in the deferred life plan, is that happiness and the life that you want is down the road. The exciting experiences you've always desired, the people you've wanted to meet, we're always told it happens when you're older. So you get these young kids coming out of college with all this passion and fire and excitement, and suddenly they just have all these influences telling them they need to pick and just do something and just get into it. When the reality is, especially with the internet and all the resources out there now, you could do anything. You could do truly anything. And there was something I was thinking on a little bit before, in that we talk about how kids think it's this yes or no, it's so black and white. I was just talking the other day with a friend of mine, and I just turned 25 this past October. And so she was saying, I'm 22, and she's in grad school, and she was talking with her friends, and everybody goes, oh, we're so old, or I'm too old for that now. And then it's almost this kind of looking down on young people for being excited or happy or going out and partying. And people just decide that they're old now because they're in the real world. It's all these assumptions that they're taking on because somebody else told them. So what in your life, or what are the things that you do that make you feel young, that remind you that being young is like an inner thing, it's in your mind? And please ignore the train horn in the background.
Is that what that was? I thought you were listening to like music or something.
Yeah, some techno.
To answer your question, you know what, man? To be honest, I don't think there's anything that I do to feel young. I just try to do what listen, a while ago, I sat down and I wrote out what's important in my life. Like, what do I want to achieve? Mm-hmm. And if I achieve these things, then I will look back at my life and I will be happy. And I'm just focused on those things. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what it is. I'm focused on attaining my values. I'm focused on my dreams. I'm focused on my vision. I don't age. It's crazy to even think about age. It doesn't matter to me what number I am or how old I am. my energy and my passion and my fire comes from achieving what I want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think for the listeners, there is so much power in writing down or, writing out in a Word document, but even just physically writing what it is you want in your life is so incredibly powerful, because what's a very unfortunate thing in this world is you have all these young, ambitious, passionate kids coming out of school, and I've done it many times. I say, what do you want to do with your life? Yeah, that question is so loaded and so, I think, redundant in a person who's about to graduate college. They've heard it a billion times, and it's one of the most terrifying questions because they feel like they need to have an answer. They feel like they need to have the perfect answer and the one thing. But the reality is, you don't. And writing down all the things you want to do means you can start taking steps towards them. You can start trying things. You can start exploring different venues to make those dreams come true. And I remember we talked in our first interview about what are the things that help you be successful, because you've done a lot of things. There's a lot of different balls that you're juggling all at the same time. And how many businesses are you currently running or operating in?
Good question. I'm going to count on my fingers.
Okay.
5.
Five. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a second, but so most people think, if I just do all the things I want to, I'll never have time, I'll never be able to take a break or slow down. How do you maintain all of operating 5 businesses? You have a newborn, maintaining a healthy relationship with your wife, and taking care of yourself.
So that's a great question. First of all, you have to. One of my most important values is my health.
Mm-hmm.
I always make sure that I'm investing in all of my aspects of health. I make sure that we're always eating high quality food. I always make sure that I'm trying. It was been really a big challenge since Aristotle was born, but we're getting back into training. I'm always reading. I'm always making sure that I plan my day. So my health is my number one priority, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. So that's step number 1. Mm-hmm. Step number 2 is I'm very, very cautious who I enter into any type of relationship with, whether it is a business relationship, a personal relationship, because I only want to be surrounded by awesome people. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to start any type of project unless it's a good fit. And one of the awesome things that starts to happen is when you're with people that are a good fit and you're focusing on what you're strong at, not what you're weak at, is you play to your strengths and you have your partners play to their strengths, and that's how you can run very successfully multiple companies, only doing things that you love and are passionate about.
Right. Wow. That's such a huge point, because I love how we can talk openly about what people believe, and I think a lot of people don't even think about it. It took me a while thinking back on what is society telling me, are my friends telling me, what are the people at my company telling me. And so you said focus on your strengths. And
yep.
Every single person has a unique ability or something that just comes out of them in such an incredible way that they can benefit and impact people. But when we get into companies, I've worked in 2 Fortune 500 companies. My current job is a much better fit. I work with great people. But especially in my first job, there were times you felt like a cog in a machine, because you're told, hey, that's great that you love to work with people and you speak 3 languages and you want to travel, but let's have you get really good at Excel and answer 50 to 100 emails a day. And so what certain businesses will try and do is squeeze you into a box that is not truly who you are, doesn't allow you to embrace what it is you want to do in life. So I think what you said is just so critical, that entering into relationships, whether that's a business relationship, picking a company to work for, starting a company, and then reaching out, your networking and the people that you bring into your life, even in your dating, your friends, it is so critical. It's that quote that I'm sure you've heard a million times, is you become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. Those things are so great. And so, all right, what are the 5 businesses that you're currently running right now?
So there is my chiropractic office, which is Gainsborough Family Chiropractic, Life by Design, West London CrossFit, Life Essentials, which is a supplement company, and a new one that myself and my wife just started about a month ago called Parenting Rebels.
Parenting Rebels. Okay, and what's that about?
Parenting Rebels essentially is looking at how people are taught to raise their children and what they're taught, what's healthy, what's normal. And I mean, we're essentially starting a rebellion against that because I don't agree with too much of it. I think that, look at it this way. Look at what you're doing. You're telling children that graduate from, college or university that, basically what you've been taught is okay, but there's a lot more to it.
Right.
And essentially what Parenting Rebels does is we look all the way back from birth and saying, hey, if parents can just teach their children that they're supposed to be happy and healthy and to follow their purpose, then when they go to college, they'll have all these things figured out already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. They'll understand their ability. That's great. That is really a fantastic idea because you're almost taking the, you're jumping in on the overcoming graduation thing from birth. So you're just starting from the beginning. We'll do a collaboration on that.
Here's the problem, right, is that I'm looking at my son and, a lot of his development is unfortunately going to be out of his control. It's going to be up to me, to supply the love and to supply the understanding and to supply the patience to grow an incredible and unique human being. Mm-hmm. And it's just unfortunate that for a lot of generations, a lot of, misinformation has been passed down.
Right. Yeah, and well, I mean, you've already got him off to being unique and awesome in his own way with a badass name like Aristotle, which I still love.
That's true.
That's such a great name. So,
that's
all right.
True.
One of your other businesses is the West London CrossFit. So this is something I like to touch because a lot of times in these interviews I focus on kind of one specific category, but you're just covering so many things to give us lots to talk about. But CrossFit, one of the big, maybe not fads, but popular growing trends in the U.S., or I think globally. I've seen it in my recent travels kind of all over the place. And there are huge supporters, and there are people that are hugely against it. And I did CrossFit for about a year and a half, and I had mixed reviews about it. There were things I really enjoyed, being a guy who's been into fitness since probably junior year of high school, and aspects that I didn't agree with so much. So for being an owner of a CrossFit gym, you have a lot of risk and you have a lot of responsibility. So how is it that you pick coaches that make sure that people are doing the activities right, they're taking care of their bodies, and they're being safe while pushing themselves to limits they've never reached before?
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting question. Again, it comes down to number one, you have to understand. I mean, a lot of the criticisms. Well, let's start even before that. There's CrossFit and there's CrossFit. There's a lot of different variations. Just because the sign says CrossFit doesn't necessarily mean that you're walking into a gym or a facility where people know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of the things that people criticize CrossFit for, unfortunately, are very valid claims. Right. This idea that you push yourself to exhaustion every single training session. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of gyms that do that. I think that's a horrible idea. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that we did is we created a vision and we created a philosophy for the gym.
Okay.
And then what we did is we hired the right people. It always comes down to being involved with the right people. We found the right people who had the same principles and the same vision and the same philosophy. And then it's really simple to teach people tasks. You can teach anybody anything, but you can't teach them how to become the right person. So you need to find the right people who have the same vision and the same beliefs, and as a result, we've developed an absolutely excellent facility. We have people that are, 60, 65 years old that have never trained a day in their life, that are coming there, that are having a good time, that are being challenged, right? Because we've written programming that's scalable for everybody. Right, and our focus is on creating mobility and strength, which are just good life skills to have, as opposed to the vision of screaming at somebody until they're beaten down into the ground.
Yeah, I think it's so critical because some of the benefits, and you hear people talk about CrossFit as almost a cult-like environment, And what's unfortunate is when someone goes to a gym where is the certification to become a certified CrossFit facility, it's like 2 weeks, right, to actually get that, be certified to open a gym?
It's actually even worse than that. It's a weekend course.
A weekend course. So for everybody listening, CrossFit can be a great thing, but in order to open you could literally go out, take this weekend course, and be certified to open a CrossFit gym. So some of the things to watch out for are Olympic lifts in particular. I mean, I think if you go to a coach, you talk to places that have certified trainers, people have gone through PT school, people that have a background in this, they understand how the body works. Kresimir, working as a chiropractor, has an immense understanding of the interactions between different muscles, the skeletal system. So in order for him to create these routines, he's considering so much more than just, oh, well, if you lift that heavy thing, you'll get stronger. And what's very dangerous is people tend to, so it's a group atmosphere, and it's generally a very supportive atmosphere, which is great. A lot of people have never been on a team in their life, so to have people go yelling and going, come on, you can do it, feels great. But what's unfortunate is when you don't have the right coaches, that turns into people supporting people with horrific form that could damage their bodies. And I've seen that time and time again at CrossFit gyms. I've seen it at gyms that I've worked at. And Olympic lifts, for example, are incredibly complex and incredibly difficult. I've been lucky to work with some very skilled and talented trainers, and they said, guys, you shouldn't even really be doing that unless you want to compete in that or you need it for a sport, for explosion. But people tend to just say, oh, I need to put up more weight because people told me I could. For the listeners, go to CrossFit, try it, and don't push yourself beyond your limits. You know when you shouldn't go up, focus on your form, and like Kresimir said, focus on mobility. People focus so much on strength and just big muscles and tight or toning, but improving your mobility is not only going to reduce your injuries, but it's also going to allow your muscles to recover more quickly, and it, in turn, will help you achieve your goals faster. So I think CrossFit is a very loaded topic right now, and there's lots of ups and downs, but I mean, there's some huge benefits. So if you're ever in West London, definitely check out Kresimir's school, that's for sure. So, yeah, all right, Life by Design. So I know we're going a little over the 30-minute marker, but I'm really curious about all these various businesses that you have going on. So could you tell us a bit about Life by Design, which is at the website lifebydesignApproved.com. Tell us a bit about what that is all about and how it's grown for you.
Sure. So, again, going back to my cancer story, essentially, one of the things that we realized is that the human body has requirements, right? There are things that you absolutely, in order to live your best life, there's things that you absolutely have to have, and if you don't have them, there's going to be some serious consequences. Mm-hmm. Nutritional wise, you need protein, you need fat, you need micronutrients. In terms of movement, like your body needs movement. Your joints need to be able to move fully. You need to be strong. You need to be able to move fast. You need a healthy brain and body connection, right? Your brain needs to be speaking to all the various different cells of your body through the nerve system. That's the purpose of chiropractic, the way that we practice it. And you need to have a purpose, and you need to be able to set goals in your life. Mm-hmm. So once we've discovered all these requirements, we decided that this is a good idea to start teaching it to people, and this is what we call Life by Design. So Life by Design is based on the idea that your life is meant to be extraordinary. That's your default. Mm-hmm. So we have to teach people what their requirements are, how to do it in order to help them live the best possible life that they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the message and the purpose, and I love how you talked about that book that you read that said, the default of the human body is not meant to be in pain or to be down or lethargic. It's meant to be incredible. Like, we're meant to be amazing, strong, intuitive, excited human beings. And so I think Life by Design, and for everybody, definitely check out the website. It's got all kinds of different links on there, from Eat by Design, They have a podcast. They have a blog talking about different events. Different topics. And it's so interesting but also refreshing to see that you're taking this different approach. Because, I mean, there's all different diet routines, programs. There's all kinds of things that promise quick results and lose 5 pounds in a week and blah, blah, blah. This isn't about that. This is about totally restructuring your life in a way that allows you to live optimally, be happy, but also embrace your own power. It's so much more than just, let's eat and work out. It's not a get rich quick. It's a lifetime changing kind of process.
Well, I mean, that's exactly the point. And again, like you mentioned a bunch of different things. Like here, we talked about CrossFit. So, because people will say, well, I want to do this life by design stuff, but I don't want to do CrossFit. I don't like CrossFit, right? And I'll say, great, no problem. But here's the thing you have to understand. CrossFit is a strategy, right? Just like power training is a strategy or Olympic lifting is a strategy. What you need to do is you need to fulfill the movement requirements of your body. Because if you don't, then there's going to be consequences. And the cool part is, Brian, is you alluded to a lot of them. Like if you're loading the bar and you're trying to get stronger, but your joints don't move, you're going to be in some serious trouble. That's because mobility is a requirement. Right? There's no possible way that you can get around that. So it's about teaching people that there's these fundamental things that they need to be doing to be successful and healthy in their life. And I don't really care what strategy they use. I don't care if they use CrossFit. I don't care if they do gymnastics. I don't care if they do yoga. I just care that they're meeting these different requirements for their health and their life.
Mm-hmm. And it's so critical. But I love that you're not committed to, well, my way is the only way or this way is the only way. And for the listeners, anybody who says they have the magic bullet, right? They have the thing, or the silver bullet, the thing that's going to solve all your problems. We are all so unique and so different. There is no way that someone could create one thing that's going to work for everybody. Yes, it can work for large groups, but as Kresimir said, it is just one strategy. It is just one method. And I've heard people say so many times, I've tried everything, right? For weight loss, for dating, for any of the other topics in life where we want to improve. There's no way that you've tried everything, because if you tried everything, there'd be some really wild stuff that you've tried. So being able to embrace the opportunity, it's very hard when you've tried multiple times and haven't seen the results you want, but continue to try things because there's always a way to make it happen. And that's a nice little segue, because I remember in our first talk, Kresimir, you had talked about the habits or the things you do to help you be successful regardless of, the chaos that life tends to bring. So what are some of the daily, weekly, monthly habits that you have that help you continue to drive forward and run 5 businesses at the same time?
So, man, since we had this conversation before, it'd probably be good if I was consistent, eh? One of the best things that I do, and again, it's been really hard since we got a little guy, so it's not perfect. Mm-hmm. But one of the best things that I do is I have a power hour. So every morning before my day begins, and I usually try to beat my son in terms of waking up, but I wake up a little bit early. And I make sure that my day is organized. So I know where everything is happening. I know what I have to get accomplished by the end of the day. And I know what a successful day will look like when I'm done. And then what I do once a week is I sit out and I plan the next week, right? I open up I use a program called Evernote, and I write down what needs to be, what are the 3 things or the 4 things or the 5 things that I absolutely must complete by next week at this time to have an incredible week. One of the other things that I do it's been really difficult because there's so much always going on, but I make sure that I make sure what's called and I didn't coin this term, my business coach Dan Sullivan coined the term, but I make sure that I take my free days. Mm-hmm. So a free day is a day, or I'm taking 2 free days a week now, but it's a day in which you're completely unplugged from anything business. You are doing whatever helps you recharge, family time, a drive, reading a book that you like, you know, whatever it is, sleeping, watching a movie. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just not business, you know. And I mean, those are three really, really simple things. And you know what's really cool, dude, is before we even in a preamble, when I asked you, you know, what was the one thing that you did to help kick you up out of the funk, you said scheduling your day. And I think that's something so powerful, man. If you just sit down and you're like, well, here's what I need to get done, you know, whether I'm super excited or pumped about it, I still need to get it done.
Right. Yeah, and I remember us having this conversation, and to be honest, this week has been one of my most productive weeks in months. And it started with, on Sunday, I said I should write it out. I've been telling myself I was going to do this for months, maybe even longer, and I've just never done it. It's one of those things where I really wanted to, but I said later, you know, I just procrastinated. And finally, I said, I'm going to do it. I said, I'm going to write out my workout plan. And I had scheduled a bunch of interviews for the podcast this week, at least one every day. And in doing that, what I think a lot of people think about a schedule, and I'm just as guilty because I've been avoiding it like the plague, they think a schedule is going to limit them. They go, oh, well, that might work for those guys, but my life is so, you know, things change so much. You know, the weeks are so unpredictable, or work is so unpredictable that I can't schedule it all. But there is power in scheduling, because even if you schedule one thing per day, even a small thing, by the end of the week, if you've done 7 things, and some might be big, some might be small. And what scheduling does is it guarantees that you set time for the important things. And then you also know, all right, once those things are done, I'm good for the day. You know, I've fulfilled what I needed to do, and whatever you have left is your free time. So just scheduling my workouts and scheduling my interviews, I was set for the week, and I found that each night I was more productive. I was feeling excited about the next day and the next interview. And even when I was kind of tired or out of it, or like, I don't really want to do my workout, I said, you promised yourself you would. Here's what you scheduled. You have 20 minutes, and then you have an interview in an hour. So you got to get it done. And it's amazing the power that comes in that scheduling.
I actually, it's right. You're right. I remember when I started doing it, I thought the exact same thing. I thought it was going to be too rigid. You know, I thought I wouldn't have time for free time. You know, it's interesting because it actually does the exact opposite. It frees you up to not only have free time, but to actually enjoy your free time because you feel like you've accomplished something.
Yes, that is such a huge point, because I had that same thing of like, oh, well, you know, I need to be free. I need to have that. I don't want that control on my life. But when you don't have that prioritization to say what's important, everything's important. And then that allows you to just feel stressed all the time. And so people say, oh, but I just need to relax when I come home from work. I'll ask you, are you truly relaxed? Or are you just sitting there on the couch scrolling through your mind all the things you should be doing and feeling guilty about it? Because that's what happens with me. But when I scheduled and it got done, then I was sitting on the couch. I felt a sense of accomplishment and kind of peace about it. And I was like, I truly have earned this time. So often we use that excuse of, oh, well, I've earned a beer. I've earned to sit on the couch, you know, and it's just because you went to work that day or something. But when you do the things you love, and you do the things, and you get done your responsibilities, because we've all got them, it's amazing how your energy and your mental state shifts, and it opens you up to so many more possibilities. It's really fantastic.
Sure. I mean, I think I know we haven't really talked about it, and we're going to be, you know, it's kind of an aside, but I think another powerful thing that, you know, I started doing was a stop doing list. You know, things that I needed to stop doing. You know, stop, you know, checking Facebook 36 times a day. You know, stop engaging in debates, you know, with certain people. You know, these things that are just huge time wasters and time sucks. It's really important to stop doing those things.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point of having these debates and these conversations, we all have limits on, and I don't like to say it because I want people to believe in being unlimited, but it's something to work towards. It's not like right now you have to be, but we have limits on our energy per day, our emotional energy, which is something I think very few people talk about. And when you surround yourself, there's some people you can't pick. Sometimes at work there's people around that are very negative. But when you surround yourself with negative influences, you wake up, you read the news, it sounds like the world's going to end. You go to the office, people talk about how much it sucks and how much they hate their job. You come home and you hang with your buddies and they talk about how much they hate their jobs, and you're just surrounded by this negative cycle. So by saying, it's not about just cutting out everyone and blocking people out. That's not it at all. It's focusing on the relationships that build you up and that you help build them up, and bringing them into your life, and then saying no to the activities that don't bring you any joy or any real peace. I love that too, because even in my last interview I was talking about the power of saying no, and it's a huge skill. I mean, and even just in telling people, no, you can't treat me like that, because we need to defend ourselves. There's no one that's going to do it for us. People kind of think once you get into the corporate world that everyone's going to be professional and adult, but all the same personalities exist that you've dealt with your whole life. So being able to say no and teach people how to treat you right, and not in an angry or a huge confrontational way, just saying, hey, I don't appreciate that. That's such a powerful skill, to be able to communicate with people that are very different than you. So Kresimir, we've jumped all over, and I love it because there's so many topics that you have so much to offer and talk about, and I think we should wrap up now. Though this is we've got some good stuff in there. You've given a lot of great insight and messages, and so we'll do two more questions. The one is the one I always finish with, and then I'd like to ask another one that I haven't finished with yet, and so the first one is, if you could go back and talk to yourself at graduation, or if you were talking, you're walking through campus and one of those kids comes up to your booth at the career fair and asks, what's your advice? Like, how do I find who I am, what I want to do? What would be the advice that you would give to your younger self, or to a young kid who's at that point in their life?
That's a really, really good question. What I would tell somebody is to spend more time doing the things that bring them joy, mm-hmm. and to figure out how they can turn that into some type of profitable career. How can you make money doing the things that you love to do? Mm-hmm. Right? To spend more time with people who they think, if I could be doing that, I would be happy. Well, why don't you just go find that person who's doing that and, buy them lunch or take them out to coffee and ask them how they're doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is so. I think so often people go to their buddies, their friends, their family. They go, I'd really like to do X, start a website or publish a book, and people shoot them down or tell them no. When none of these people have ever even tried. When you go to somebody who's published a book, they have a whole different level of insight to offer. All right, so, and the final question is, I'm very curious about people's goals and ambitions, because I think a lot of people will hear your story and look at you and be like, he's made it. He's like, there's this fake idea in our minds of once you make it, then you just kind of go on autopilot, right? Then life is just great and it's grand and you're good. So what are the things that you are doing right now that excite you more than anything else in your life? What are the top, most exciting things that are happening right now in Kresimir's life?
Well, number one, life is great and life is grand right now. Mm-hmm. Now, with that being said, things in my life are far from perfect. There's a ton of room for improvement, but one of the things that I'm constantly doing is I'm very grateful for the things that I have now. I'm very grateful for all my lessons that I've learned, and I'm very grateful for all that I've accomplished. I'm not happy with all of it. There's a lot of things that I want to improve on. I always want to grow. I always want to get better. But it's interesting, right? There was a time there where I was pushing, and it was that old story of, oh, once I do that, then I'm going to be happy, and once I do that, then I'm going to be happy, and once I get that, then I'm going to be happy. And I was hitting all these milestones, and this is going to sound really cliche, but it's true nonetheless. You hit these milestones, and you're like, the happiness and the ecstasy that lasts for a day or two, and then you're just on to the next thing, right? Then you're already looking for the next mountaintop.
Right.
So one of the things that I'm focusing on is I'm just focusing on being happy, right? On and I want to be clear. I'm not saying it like being a dummy that no matter what happens, I'm happy. Like that every single day is great. No, every day is far from great. But I'm always looking for the wins. I'm always making sure that at the end of the day I write down what's the good things that happened today. So I'm always focusing on the positive, right? And once you're in your mind, you're already successful, then it becomes super fun and super great, to keep looking forward. So there's a lot of great things happening. We are ready to, Life by Design is ready to grow and expand, and there's a whole line of products for chiropractors that we've been developing that we're ready to launch. Parenting Rebels has been super exciting because it's a new project, and myself and my wife Rochelle are more than pumped to be sharing our stories of parenting, and to have really, really awesome people on the podcast sharing their stories about parenting. And the practice is exciting because one of the things that has been missing in the chiropractic profession is a good way to market that makes chiropractors look, like experts and really, really good. And unfortunately, most chiropractors are poor marketers. So we're busy developing that. So that's what's been exciting me lately.
That's great, man. Those are all really, I use the word fantastic a lot. I've realized on this podcast. It's true, but I was like, I need to find other describing words. But it's really amazing, all these things that you're doing and you're trying, and I wish you the best in all of them, man. I know that your passion and that energy that you're bringing to things is really going to take you to incredible places, even beyond what you're imagining right now. And for the listeners, like he said, we hear all the time, be happy, and you go, how? The first thing is to start to recognize all the blessings and the gifts that exist in your life right now, whether it's by writing it down, whether it's just by sitting in a quiet room and really thinking about and being grateful for all the good things in your life. Because we all have shit, guys. I'm not going to lie. We all have good and bad. We have ups and downs. We have huge setbacks and then these huge leaps forward. But in our lives, there is so much good around you, but society and just kind of the way we're brought up tells us and shifts our focus to everything we don't have, we don't like, and we don't want. Because once we get in that mentality, we're in a mentality of just acquiring or reaching outside ourselves to find fulfillment and happiness. When right now you have everything inside you to be happy, to feel fulfilled, and to grow and share your message in the world. And as I've said so many times, I'm not an expert at all. Kresimir, who's a guy who has achieved amazing things, and I really want to emulate so many of the things that he's done, the mentality that he has. He said it's not always easy, it's not always perfect, but when you take the steps, you make the effort, you will find very quickly that your life is going to take a whole new path that you never even imagined was possible before. So being happy, start focusing on you, and start focusing on all the good that exists in your life. So, Kresimir, man, thank you so much for doing this again. I always have so much fun when we talk, so this has been just awesome.
Oh, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it, man, and I love what you're doing. I love your energy, and I'd love to come back anytime.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, we can do episodes. There's like 5 or 6 different topics you're an expert on, so there'll definitely be more coming. So, Kresimir, we've mentioned the website a couple times, lifebydesignApproved.com. What are some of the other areas or other spots where people can come to learn more about you?
Sure, so they can go to parentingrebels.com. They can go to my chiropractic office, which is gfchiropractic.ca. And if you want to send me an email, it's Kresimir, Kresimir, JUG, @yahoo.com.
All right, guys, and just one final note. Kresimir is a guy who has a lot of different experience. He's started business, he's running multiple businesses, He's crossing over different industries and different fields, and he is making himself available. That is very rare, and that's a very open gesture of him. So if you reach out to him, I guarantee, I know him, I've met him, he's a hugely nice, open guy, but he also has a lot of experience to share and offer. So please reach out to him. It's rare to get access to a mentor or a person who has this kind of experience and will reach out and just throw their email out there. So reach out to him, let him know you heard about him from the podcast, and ask him the questions, because he really is going to give you some phenomenal insights and advice. So, Kresimir, man, this has been awesome. This will not be the last one, and thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it, pal.
All right, man. Have a good one.